So do you want to start with yeah, I think we decided that Urvashi would start first. And would you like to start with just what do you think sustains your poetry? Just a short statement.
So in my case, I feel that in the last few years, what's really sustained my poetry is the ecosystem that exists in India. It's not very large, but it is effective. There are literary magazines that published my work early on, Muse India, Four Quarters magazine, and those were really big boosts of confidence for a very young poet. And they've published many writers early in their career. Apart from literary magazines, there's also fellowships and creative writing prizes. And I always feel that even if you don't win those prizes, it's a really good disciplining habit to have to apply to these things when you feel you're ready and to send your best work out. Because it pushes you to edit, it pushes you to send your best work out there, and it does make you better, and it makes you feel like someone's out there listening, that there is an audience for this kind of thing. And there have been a lot of new publishers in the last few years who really pushed for poetry, and those have been the many factors that have sustained my personal poetry. I'm going to start by reading a few of my poems, or do you want to talk about what sustains your poetry? All right, I'll start by reading some of my poems, and then Jerry will take over. This first poem is called The Years Come A-Tumbling, and it's based off of a memory I have of annual day in first grade where everybody had to wear fancy dress and parents had to create costumes at home. And my mom made me like a fairy or an angel, and she like made these wings out of cardboard. And she like used like petticoat string or something to tie it to my back, and I lost one of them, and she was really upset about it. And this is a poem called The Years Come A-Tumbling. It took long hours to fashion a set of wings out of cardboard and silver foil, to pour glue out of a blue bottle, paint with a flat brush to the very edge. My mother punched holes, slipped drawstrings borrowed from petticoats, and tied them on my back. As these stories go, at the close of the school day, I returned one-winged. My mother was inconsolable. Once, overcome with the wrong sort of love, I slipped a silver ring studded with moon off my finger and handed it to a boy. What a gesture. When he broke the delicate metal, I wanted only the ring. The boy could stay where he was. But each time I asked him for the pieces to repair, he refused. Promises that he would fix it himself were followed by anger. What did one ring matter? I reached for reasons. It was a gift from an aunt when I first left home. It was my favorite stone. But why should I explain why I love a thing? I wept at the loss. More proof that I was shallow, not as pure in my love as I claimed. It took me 20 years to remember my mother bending her weight into the scissors to carve wings from a thick board, to recall how I have no memory of when the string loosened, when the silver trailed into the crowd, how I was maddened by her grief. Now I reach for the phone to tell her I never got the ring back, to apologize that I misplaced the love pulled from her like water from a stone. Thank you. This next poem is called The Meaning of Family. How to explain to you your failure is our failure. The sound of a chicken bone cracking is shared around the table. The distance between dinner and the door is the number of truths spoken. This is your life is a refrain that works in other countries, with us removed like limbs from a mannequin who resembles you. Do you dare to talk back with words we have taught you? You are forcing us to say we are tired. Now don't hold it against us. We rewrote your poems in the fridge because we could not bear to see a WANT or a HIM every time we reached for a glass of water. The cigarette smoke is written all over your face, is in the pillowcase when we lie awake wondering what time you are coming home. तुम्हें अपने फैमिली का बिल्कुल ख्याल नहीं है. How to prove to you this is a life worth living? I'm reading a lot of poems about family today, it appears. This next one's called Involuntary, and it's about my relationship with my sister. When I reach to console her on a New Year's Eve, the first time in her brief life she has been alone, I'm taken aback by my own direction, kneeling to a love that falls from me, whether I want it to or not, that grows inside me, the same as sweat or snot or pus. Forgive the lack of diplomacy. This is sometimes what love comes to, searching for a person who doesn't want to be found, who needs her own kindness, and when she fails to give it to herself, it pours out from me. It feels natural, even God-given for a minute, before she gives it back. And really, who would want this kind of weak love anyway? This next poem is, it was inspired by crossing a rope bridge in Ireland. It was between two cliffs, really, and it was terrifying because you can see through it, and it's just held together by rope, nothing else. It's called Alone. Only 4 people at a time on the rope bridge, each life rocking the other gently. The stomach is a swing, attuned to this movement, singing with it. The Atlantic is visible under our feet, bluer than anyone remembers. On the other side, the promise awaits. A notebook is opened, small and fallen flowers drying demurely inside. En route, a Kinnavara pony shades its young by standing over it. An unusually warm Irish summer. Seagulls skim the waves to cool off. Stepping off the bridge, grass is grasped at for support. I sit far from the cliff's edge, thinking of Jory Graham saying joy is the lifting of hunger. A woman in the distance waves. Who, me? I step away from the cliffs. 2 girls ask if I will photograph them, and I ask back. In the photo, I look small and full of wonder. A pine cone tightly wound into itself. Walking back to the tour bus, I breathe so loudly, a silver-haired couple stops to check on me. At final gulp, the Atlantic is wide as a puffin's caw, caw, caw. This is called In Praise of Drool. The New Year's Eve, I slept on the floor. I knew one of us had to leave. It took another 17 months because there is no manual on how to resist a man who steps off a moving train, who circles a roundabout at 120 kilometers per hour, who says he will change in the morning. I climbed back into bed before he woke up, afraid to admit how little I could bear the rise and fall of his chest in the sheets. I chomped on a chili and smiled, told everyone, look how green it is, I grew it in my garden. But next to you, I sleep like a child at sundown. My mouth leaves a trail of moon rule, tooth whisked, quiet as sugar, melting off the tongue. I have one last poem. It's inspired by where I grew up, Goa. I always feel that time in Goa works very differently. It's much slower and nothing much happens sometimes. And it's called Waiting for Movement. The laburnum is late with its lightning yoke. An abundance of mulberries stains bowls. A bird call, round and refined, emanates from the forest. This day holds its stillness like breath. I set out to invent explanation for a rotting fruit to solve. The only event is humidity. Somewhere a heron has been perching for hours, waiting for the stillness to give way, for the surface to tremble with a tadpole or insect to eat. Evening prayers at the mosque travel over the light, leaving the tops of trees. At 7, the church bell radiates through the houses in the village, pausing between each toll to allow breeze and a vehicle in the distance. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What sustains, I think I got lucky when I started writing poetry. It was like a guilty secret because I went to an all-boys school, and in an all-boys school, if you wrote poetry, you were obviously diseased and deformed in some way. You know, and you were meant to be beaten, because in boys' schools there were those who beat and those who got beaten. Very much like our society today. We were beasts. So I hid the fact that I wrote poetry until I got to college. And then I bumped into the poetry circle, a group of friends, a group of people who would listen to poetry, who made Saturday evenings special and precious, because we came in and it was a given that you were writing poetry. It was accepted that you were writing poetry. You didn't have to explain it to anybody. You just had to explain why you used a metaphor that was old, or you used a phrase that was borrowed from somebody else. You had to talk about what poetry meant to you. That was so liberating. It was literally coming out of the closet. It was literally like standing up and saying, I am a poet for the first time. But I remember the first time I went into the poetry circle with a poem clutched in my sweaty paw and in my heart. I couldn't read it because I realized that if I was going to stand up and read a poem to these people, they would know me in a way, these strangers would know me in a way that perhaps my family did not know me, because I had not had the courage to read my poems to my family. I still don't have that courage, because they'll say, very nice, Baba, and they will will not care, right? But it took 2 or 3 sessions and I realized everyone is vulnerable here. Everyone is naked. And I can be naked among the naked. So this first poem is called, I Cannot Finish This Poem Because It Can Only Be Finished by Your Poem. It is also known as, I Am Here to Upset You. Really sorry, huh? Really sorry. I am here to upset you. I know you are comfortable. I know because I have often been comfortable. I know you are comfortable. I hope you are comfortable. I hope because I have often been comfortable. And in comfort, no poems come. When no poems come, the world slows down a pace. When no poems come, the mobs gather, and in their hands they have burning torches. When no poems come, we begin to tumble into hate. So I am here to upset you. When you are upset, you get angry. I know, because I am that way. I get angry too when I am upset. When you are upset, you get scared. I know, because when I am upset, I feel fear. When you are upset, there is a chance you will beat me. I know, because I have wanted to beat those who upset me. You will hate me, I think, I fear, because I have hated those who upset me. You will try to hurt me, but there is also the chance a poem will come. For you, from you, a poem will come. And when that poem comes, hope will be born again. Thank you. Prayer. Lord of the linear narrative, show me the point at which I begin. Stop me when I have said too much. Regulate my voice. I boom too much, and my whispers are shrill. Feed me words on those long, slow afternoons. Allow me the grace of serendipity to find lost continents on my tongue. Give me the gift of silence, and then set me adrift. The next poem is called Asylum. It's a poem for my mother. My mother was bipolar, as probably everyone knows who's read M and the Big Whom. Asylum. Chemical soup stilled. It is a harsh harbor we have found for you. Be calmed, you loll at anchor. Barnacles cling to you. Their slime-scented kisses send rot shivering through your timbers. Your nails are copper-tinted, varnished, unchipped, and your holes filled with pebbles, lacquered pink, a ballast of torpor. Beyond the headlands lie unsuspected fires of alien mornings flecked red with maritime suspicion. Our eyes ache with watchfulness. Sleep is inevitable, and the slippage of anchor and sense and what love means. When the sky screams, the blowtorch is wise. In the calm, the encrusted stains, blood, rust, mock those decisions. What watches us? Those holes we cut to still you, are those your eyes? When I used to go to poetry festivals and sit in the audience and always think, I'm better than those guys, why am I not reading the poems? Why are they reading the poems? Why am I sitting down here? Which is, I think, what everybody young feels. And your turn will come. You'll be up here one day, don't worry. Just keep writing those poems. People would start by saying, my poems are about. And I kept thinking, my poems are about. What are my poems about? And then I decided to write a poem called My Poems, which would be the introductory poem that would allow me not to say what my poems are about. And hey, look at the strange thing that happened. I just introduced my introductory poem. Stop it, Jerry. Okay. My poems. My poems are about many things. My poems are about poetry festivals. My poems are written for people like you. My poems take shortcuts. My poems ride slipstreams. My poems take the path of least resistance. My poems are needy. My poems need you to like them. My poems want you to remember them. My poems demand that you should memorize them. My poems want prizes. My poems want to be on syllabi and curricula. My poems want to be translated into Hindi, Marathi, Telugu, Gujarati, Sanskrit, French, German, Italian, Afrikaans, and Australian. My poems want diplomatic immunity. My poems want visa on arrival. My poems want to be burned in public, but only by men in the right clothes. My poems want exclusion from the canon and recovery by Pound or Eliot or Rushdie. My poems want to be epigraphs to other poems. My poems want to be photographs of busty blondes with smooth, silky, those things. My poems want challenge virtual reality. My poems are live headlines and red bottom lines. My poems want you to sit up and pay attention in pin drop silence, or they'll come and get you. My poems are torn from the gut and mined in the amygdala. My poems are dredged from the heart and filed in the sigmoid column. My poems are seeds planted in your head. They'll sprout when you're dead. My poems are viruses. They self-replicate. They do that parthenogenesis things. My poems are programs. They'll erase your hard disk and implode. My poems are dangerous. They can only be bought by adults who have certificates of illiteracy that make them immune to my poems. My poems are wanted by Interpol. My poems are tracked by the FBI. My poems are protected by Amnesty International. Thank God I am nothing like my poems. It so happens that in the world of literary festivals, there are mistakes made. So the Abu Dhabi Literary Festival, which itself is a mistake because it exists inside an autocracy, but hey, we have a literary festival inside an autocracy here, so cut that out. The Abu Dhabi Literary Festival invited me there, and obviously I was the wrong kind of candidate because I arrived in the Hotel Crown Plaza, which was this beautiful, swanky hotel. I'd never seen anything like it, and they wanted my credit card. And I didn't have a credit card. So they wanted my debit card, and I didn't have a debit card. And they said, everyone looked puzzled behind the counter. They said, but we have to deduct some money from your credit or debit card just in case you use the hotel, the little bar, in that mini bar in your room. So I said, well, here's the solution, clear the mini bar. So they said, clear the mini bar? It was as if I had said, I will live without water for 5 days in your hotel. But they cleared the minibar under protest, I think. And I went up to this room and I walked in and I thought, I know why they wanted me to do that. Because I was not meant for this room. So but I fell in love with that room. I still remember it. My hotel room at the Crown Plaza, Dubai. I love my hotel room. It was not designed for me, I know. It was designed for a tired, world-weary businessman with sacks of dollars, a saluki, and 2 mistresses. I am puzzled by my room, and my room is puzzled by me. My room wants to know why I am not watching the business news, to which the television is turned as a default station. It wants to know why I have no laptop and no mobile phone and no phone calls that require me to stand by the window in a dressing gown, talking animatedly to Bill and Barb and Nihar and Ahmed. Room 1654, this is for you. Room, you are larger than my home. Room, you have running water all 24 hours. I sometimes wake up in the night and dabble my fingers in fresh flowing streams. Room, you offer me a view of the city, spread out like a gold souk. Room, you have paintings, 4 of them, 2 in the toilet, and I would study these paintings like a connoisseur when I am on the pot, but one is behind my head. Room, you cost 1,950 dirhams a day, not inclusive of 10% municipal tax and 10% service tax, and that's more than I have ever earned from my poetry. Room, I can barely sleep because I can't bear to think that I might waste even 1 dirham of that rental in sleeping. Room, your lights. There's one near my bed, near my head, which turns itself on if I touch it. I touch it. I touch it again. I touch it on, off, on, off. Room, what are you doing to me? I've become a pervert. Room. Room, your air. It's cool, it's clean, it's air as it should be. I have a cold and a running nose. My system is not used to this. Room, your bed. Should you be so yielding? Have you no self-respect? Room, come, let me go. Room of 4 pillows, room of a minibar emptied before my arrival in it because I have no credit card. Room filled with chocolate bars and pistachio nuts that I would be a fool to eat at those prices. Room, I'm going to bed now. You should sleep too. Stop looking at me, room. And please, this transparent door, this picture window to the shower. Room, I'd like some privacy, please. Room, keep this between us. But I'm going to take the soap, the shampoo, the conditioner, the shower gel, the shower cap, the pencil, the pen, the envelopes, the writing pads, the tea bags, the shop, the coffee powder, the extra sugar, the soft slippers, and one big, fat, white, virginal towel. Thank you so much. That's my ode. And recently, just last year, a terrible thing happened. An Indian couple in Bali got caught stealing almost the entire room. They had not packed the bed and put it into their luggage because the bed wouldn't fit. But otherwise, the teapot, the lampshade, the pillows, the fittings in the toilet, everything was in their luggage. And they were rather overwrought that the that the hotel wanted this stuff back. They were surprised and angry. So when I saw that, I thought, well, there for the grace of God, I knew what could be pinched happily and what has to be left behind. And that one big fat white virginal towel, I have to say, I much regret because it took up half my house when I got it home. I have also, how much time do I have left? So I'm going to do 10 minutes of my translations, and then we'll have 10 minutes of Urvashi to close down. I also, because I'm foolhardy in a kind of way. I was walking in a gym in Mahim where I live, and the gym where I train, trying to lose weight, plays relentless percussion music, chaka chaka janka chaka janka chaka, which is supposed to make you walk faster. That day their sound system was not working. So on the next treadmill was a classical singer who decided to walk and sing at the same time. And she was singing a song from the Bhakti Geet, the tradition of love poetry addressed to God, in the middle of this gym. And I was listening to it. It was my private concert. And the wonderful thing about Indian classical music is they don't sing a line and go on. They sing a line, they come back to it again, they explore it, they sing it in 3 different ways. So your mind can keep wandering around this, and you can start almost translating this. So the first song she was singing was Mungi Udali Akashi, which meant an ant flew into the sun, into the sky. Tine Gilile Suryanshi, and then she swallowed the sun. And each time she sang that, a new image arrived in my head. First it was a little girl sitting down and picking gently, so gently, a black ant up and closing one eye and using it to eclipse the sun. And then it was the image of what happens when you swallow God. A meltdown of lava and sunlight inside you. Mungi udali surya akashi, tine gilile suryanshi. And somewhere I thought, this is so beautiful. I want to read this stuff. So I turned to Neela, who was standing next to me, this great classical singer walking next to me, and I said, I want to read these poems. Have they been translated? So she said, no one's done them. I said, let's do them together. And I've said this to people again and again across the country. I've said to Urdu poets, Tamil poets, Telugu poets, let's choose 50 of the best poems from your translation, from your tradition. Let's translate them together. And they've all said, yeah. And they've never come through. No one ever does it. But Neela was different. Neela came with these poems, 50 poems chosen from the tradition, and we set to work. And it was a gorgeous thing, the most beautiful thing I've ever done in poetry, other than writing poetry. Which is beautiful, not in the poems that are done. Those are my poems, and they're flawed, they're like me. But the writing of the poems, the fact that you're doing a poem, that is beautiful in the moment. In that moment, it is lovely and sacred. She would sing the poem to me, and then I would catch it. And I would try and translate it. And then we would work on it together. And she'd say, no. And I'd work again and work again. 7 years later, 50 poems from that tradition comes out next month. This is Soirabai. Kiti he marti, kiti he radti. How much death, how much weeping. Who is that laughing on the sly? We look and wonder what is truth. And why so many pine for a lie? What is death? What is grieving? At whom do we aim our thoughtless laughter? Who has been spared? Who is leaving? Our fate is common in the hereafter. Soira says, I find it odd. Not one among them remembers God. You can clap for Soirabai. Thank you. This is at the point in time when people are still debating whether women who menstruate should be going to Sabrimala or should be entering temples. This is Soirabai talking about it back in the day. Okay? Soira. You say some bodies are untouchable. Tell me, what do you think of the soul? You say defilement is born in the body. If menstrual blood makes me impure, this blood of mine fertilizes the world. Tell me, who has not sprung from this source? Soira says, this impurity is the cornerstone of your world. That's why I praise only Panduranga, who lives in every body, pure, impure. Then there's Bahini. Bahini has a terrible life. She's young and she's married to a much older man. He doesn't seem to care about her. He sells her calf. Her cow has a calf and he sells it, and she loves this calf. It's almost as if her child went away. But then she meets Tukaram. And there is something about Tukaram that draws her to him, and such happiness then. Such happiness. I could have sat there even to the end. I bathed in the Indrayani and joy-soaked. I went to the temple. I looked upon Panduranga. I felt his gaze upon me. The words began to flow. For any poet, the words begin to flow. That is God. The words begin to flow. It's a gift. It is you, and you don't believe in God, and you may be a communist, you may be an atheist, you may be anything. But the moment when those words begin to flow, there is God. In that moment, there is God. I looked upon Panduranga. I felt his gaze upon me. The words began to flow. I bowed to Tukoba and went home. Bahini says, the ocean is within me. In the sky of my heart, God spoke in thunder. Only your name. Fill my eyes. I want to dance for you. Dance without stopping. Only you in everything. Make it so. Make it so. So Jani prayed, and night fell, and with it he came. And here is a lovely poem. The second last I'll do, and then here. There's so much in this book, so much of these women that you just want. I want sometimes to just take this book and shove it at people and say, read, read, read. This is our tradition. Read, read, read. Reading will save us. This tradition we will save if we read, read, read these women. Here's a lovely, liberating, happy poem written again. Khande raya tula marina bakara, which means, Khande raya, I will sacrifice a ram for you. Khande raya, what if I sacrifice a man? Would you be a ram? Would you be kind and slay my man? When my man's gone, I'll guffaw, and then you could take my mother-in-law. When she's dead, I'll get some rest. My father-in-law, take him next. With him dead, I'll get some peace. My brother-in-law, give him surcease. Now that death would give me bliss. My sister-in-law is next on the list. Her death would finally set me free to set out as a Varkari. Jani says, Khande, kill them one by one and let me stay by your feet alone. They allowed themselves everything in the tradition. They allowed themselves anger at God. Keshava, I am a whore. I have come to wreck your home. That's love. When you can say this to God openly. You cannot say it now to a co-religionist. You cannot say it to a person of another faith. But you could say it to God. And this is the God they want to defend. You will defend God. God is in the job of defending you. Muktabai. Nirgunache dahali palna lavila. On a branch of the formless. A branch of the formless. On a branch of the formless, a cradle is tied, and Muktai's son is sleeping inside. Sleep, sleep, little one, no words are needed. That one hand clapping can go unheeded. There's no sleep now, so why talk of waking? Just this alertness, this awareness breaking. This state has no name, but it lets you see. Turn your eye inward and float now, free. In the cradle you've spun, now drift at your ease. Rocked by the mind, still tied to the breeze. 6 hours of rocking, his gaze still steady. Muktai tells Tsangya, wake, listen, be ready. Thank you very much. Okay, I'll read one more of that one, and then you must read. Okay, because otherwise then it'll be like all this, like when someone else says you're a feminist, it's a great compliment and I accept it. I wouldn't say it myself because then that's just being shitty. But I'm saying I don't want to take over time, okay? Time is for both of us here. Doitsa padar alak handavarti, because this is the poem that I was talking about. Jani, lovely story, too difficult to go into here, but Jani is talking to the God she loves, who comes and helps her in her daily chores, who works with her. Okay, and she's telling him this is a moment of rage, of anger, because he's not been there for a while. He's been missing. God goes missing sometimes. I have let my veil drop to my shoulders. Bareheaded, I shall walk through the market. In my hand the cymbals, on my shoulder the veena. Let who will try to stop me now. Come wish me well, anoint my wrists with oil. Jani says, I have become your whore, Keshava. I come now to wreck your home.
Would you remind us what the collection is called? The translated poems.
The translation poems is called The Ant Who Swallowed the Sun, in honor of Muktabai, who's my sister under the skin. She was born 7 centuries ago, but she and I, we get on so well. When Muktabai was really difficult to translate because she's very philosophical. And every time I would say to Neela, this one we can't do, Muktabai would laugh at me all the way home. Ha couldn't do that, right? And I'd say, shut up. You are difficult. And this is a compliment that I cannot do you. And she'd say, yeah, compliment. Silence me. That's a compliment. Don't carry me on your shoulders. That's a compliment. Put me down on the wayside. That's a compliment. Thank you for the compliment, Geronimo. And I'd get home and try again. Muktabai and I really, I found a friend. I really found a friend in Muktabai and Soirabai. My two buddies, and when things are bad, I go back to Muktabai and Soirabai. And they always console. I thought Tukaram was a buddy, but Tukaram is often not as much of a buddy. He's a good friend, but he's not a 4 a.m. friend. Tukaram I can rely on for 11 o'clock coffee. He'll be there for 11 o'clock coffee and I'll have to pay, I think. So, but Muktabai and Soirabai, they'll pick up the phone at 4 a.m. in the morning.
I think what Jerry was saying earlier about the poetry circle becoming a first home for his poetry made me realize that my initial answer about what sustains my poetry is a little lacking. Because I did talk about institutional support and the ways in which there's a formal system in place to support poets. But actually, what allowed me to be a poet were 3 pieces of luck. One was that on my first day of undergrad, I met another poet. She was in my class. Her name is Shoini Basak. And she and I started writing together.
And you all said to each other, I'm a poet, you write poetry. That's so wonderful, yeah? Really,
Yeah.
I concealed it from anybody.
I think it was within a few weeks, of knowing each other, if not immediately. And we were the only people who would take out poetry from the library and read it. And we just became great friends. And it makes it much less lonely, and it makes it feel much more feasible when you have another person who's doing the same thing and who wants the same thing. She wanted to do this weird thing like study writing, which is what I wanted to do, and that's what we both ended up doing after our undergrad was over. The second piece of luck was also in college. I had a professor from another college come in. Her name was Neetu Das, and she came with this sheaf of papers. And in the papers were poems by Indian women poets. Contemporary, but I had never heard of them. Their books were not available in bookstores. I would never have found out about them if she hadn't brought that sheaf of papers. This was, I think, 10 years ago, and 10 years ago there was no question of getting poetry easily. Now it's available on Amazon. Of course, lots of things are out of print, but it's much more accessible than it used to be. And the poets that I read in those pages, it was the first time I found my community. I was like, these are Indian young women poets. These are people like me. They are talking about things that are familiar to me, that resonate with me. And it was just such an eye-opening experience. And I started reading. I hunted down their books. I emailed them, and they mailed me a copy and things like that. And reading them really, really informed my work. And the third piece of luck really was that I lived in Delhi. And there was a writer called Atti Rao. She started holding workshops in her house every Sunday. And every Sunday I would go to her house for 3 hours. And it became, I was very busy with college and work and on the weekdays, but on Sunday I would go and you would write for those 3 hours and you would discuss each other's work. And it became such a disciplined thing to do. I would look forward to that time. I knew, it just became a habit. When I would go there, the words would flow, the ideas would come. And even if I didn't find time to write during the rest of the week, I would at that point. And it was a very helpful thing for me to have. So it's really been other poets who have sustained my poetry. And thank you, Jerry, for reminding me of that. This is a poem about my football coach in Goa when I was growing up. His name is Mr. Joseph. And it's the titular poem from the book, Terrarium. What we knew for certain was that Mr. Joseph pushed us as hard as the boys. He expected us to slice the sky as cleanly, to slip our bodies into mud as willingly, to taste the dessert of a win as raucously. Our screams filled the football field with pride. I don't know how many of us still empty our lungs, but we know the feeling, know where to find the spigot. Other girls were good at reading litmus paper or reciting the Constitution, but we had the world at the instep of our soul. We knew how to curve air around the planet, knew how to send moons to halo the earth. In torrential rain, not even the sharp teeth of our shoes could keep us from slipping into brown slush. Mr. Joseph commanded that we wipe the mud from our eyes, keep playing, keep swinging. That was the first poem from the book, and I think I'll end on the last poem from my book. It's called Let Us Pray. I was inspired by the Christian vows that are traditionally exchanged at weddings. And every time I heard those vows, I didn't really think of a romantic partner, but I thought of families. And so that's how I adapted it. Dear family, I wish we weren't growing old. I laughed at mom's mammogram because I'm waiting for the very last minute to experience regret. Let me start to apologize. I write the same poem time and time again like a child, repeating a swear word she's not meant to. The expansive arrogance of my youth is in the process of abandonment. When I hear the words for better or for worse, I think of my high school teacher's parting shot to her graduating students. No one will ever love you as much as your parents. It's taken me years to notice those words landed 80 different ways that day. I could waste more time. I know what in good times and in bad mean because we have given each other both. Being your family means walking down the same aisle over and over again in the dress I picked out when I was younger and believed the glitter alone, with a cake thrown in, could sustain me. There is no undoing who I once thought we were, no apology large enough to fill this cathedral, only a poem admitting that there is no point pretending I do not love the aisle, the eternal vows, the walking towards what we already belong to. Thank you.